Yeshua was in the desert for 40 days. Moses and the Israelites for 40 years. Elijah, David. It says that Yeshua was led by the Holy Spirit into the desert. That word desert in Aramaic is Madbara in Hebrew. Even more important in that phrase, though, is that word Holy Spirit. That word Holy Spirit in Aramaic is Ruha Dukudsha. Ruha Dukudsha is, the word Ruha is the word breath. It was the word translated as spirit in so many of the Jesus teachings. If there was anything I could offer to people just in general, it's that understand that whenever you see that word spirit, what he was more accurately thinking at that time was closer to breath, which is something much more direct, rather than that Latin spiritus you can't quite get your fingertips on. But breath, and that word kadash, kudsha, is a word that means whole, all-encompassing, all-embracing. Like the Greek holos, holy doesn't mean somehow better than secular or better than the everyday. It literally means complete and whole. So what we're actually speaking of here is the whole or the all-embracing breath of God. The all-embracing breath of God led Yeshua into the desert. Now this word desert, Madbara, doesn't mean simply that space outside of the city walls. The desert is also that space in human consciousness, deep in our hearts, deep in our unconscious. Desert are those spaces in our heart, in our unconscious, that we don't really bring the light to on a regular basis. And I see this almost disturbing trend out there on the road as I travel all over North America, and I see this massive hunger for everyone trying, or so many people trying to be the light rather than actually being the light. And what happens is, it's like, don't think about the color of your car, or let's try an example, don't think about Michael Jackson. Who is it you're not thinking about right now? In order not to think about him, you have to think about him, and that's the catch. By trying not to think about certain things, and we're trying to do the light and the right thing, but unfortunately trying to do the light and the right thing is turning away from those things that we're not taking light to those spaces in our consciousness. We're not going into the desert, into those spaces that need the light the most in order for us to feel whole, balanced. And I'll see people mouthing about sacred balance, but not actually comprehending that. The desert is that space in our consciousness that, like I say, that we're not used to looking at. Now, if we look back and we look at Moses in the desert, Moses with the Israelites in Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, we find that it says that he wasn't allowed to enter the promised land. Only the younger generation could enter. The older generation had essentially to die off. Only those that were younger, who had no knowledge of the illusions of the duality of good and evil, could actually enter into the promised land. Only those absolutely single in being, untouched, you could say, almost. The root word of that word translated as generation means root cause. The older root causes had to die off. So in order for us to enter into that promised land, the older causes have to die off. And in Mark, in Matthew, and in Luke, we have 3 examples of 3 temptations of Yeshua in the desert, which we're going to get to in another video. But we also, in the Hebrew Bible, we have Elijah. Elijah hid from King Ahab in the desert, just above the Jordan Valley. And it actually says that he was fed by ravens, which is pretty cool. David hid from King Saul in En Gedi in the desert, which was near Qumran. And there was a phenomenal psalm from David where he said, God, you are my God, whom I seek, my soul, Hebrew nephesh, in Aramaic napsha, the breath of my life, literally soul, the breath of my life thirsts for you. My whole being aches for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. Well, that's what the desert experience is like. A dry and weary land where there is no water. That space where Rumi spoke of that longing, the longing for life itself.